Hello, my name is Larry Nelson. Please bear with me. This video is too long to remember, and I'll have to read it as I go along. But I would like to bring to your attention something that happened a long time ago. So long ago, in fact, that most of the voters of today had not yet been born at the time. This is something that should be common knowledge to the voters in this November presidential election. But you won't see it on any of the news networks, and no one's talking about it. But back in 1950s and 60s, Russia was considered by most to be our country's #1 enemy. It was a communist country, and under the leadership of a man by the name of Gorbachev. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. I remember when Gorbachev made a public statement to the United States and the world, and this is what he said. We will overthrow the United States, and we will do it without even firing a shot. Now that was a pretty bold statement considering how successful and powerful the United States was. A lot of people did not think it would even be possible, but it was. And today I'd like to explain to you why it was possible. I'd also like to explain how our enemies from 60 years ago has set the stage for this next presidential election. Even though Gorbachev has died a long time ago, and the Russian government that he led collapsed back in 1992. The machine he set in motion to overthrow the United States is still operating and has grown into a monster that is now out of control. Where the Russians left off, the Chinese Communist Party took over. You see, our government of the United States was designed to be responsive to the wills of the citizenship. The voters themselves at any time have the power to vote their own government out of existence. All Khrushchev had to do was to change the will of the majority of the voters. And this could be done by setting up a secret shadow government that would do the things the voters didn't approve of, while making the people believe that it was their own government that was responsible. He set up a government that secretly infiltrated every portion of our government. One of the key factors for his success was that the secret shadow government was set up to pre-qualify and choose our political candidates rather than letting the American voters choose them. Yes, I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein and the network under him. His job was to get the goods on every important person who might become a political candidate or a government appointee. In short, if they could not be controlled by bribery or blackmail, they simply never got placed on the ballot. In the last 60 years, our current president, John F. Kennedy, Ronald Reagan, and Dwight D. Eisenhower appear to be the only exceptions. Once in power, regardless of whether they were Democrat or Republican, they were controlled by the shadow government and did the things that were against the will of the majority of the citizens. The whole idea was to create internal unrest. And since the shadow government operated in secret, and since they controlled the news media, the blame always got put back on the original government. The government of the people, by the people, for the people. It is this internal unrest that they were seeking to develop. It was easily done by keeping us in wars, by controlling our financial system, and destroying our economy. I realize that this is controversial, but whether you want to believe it or not, open up your minds and consider it. Toward the end of Second World War, our government realized that there were aliens on this planet and that they were aiding Hitler by giving him anti-gravity technology. Admiral Byrd's trip to Antarctica in 1946 confirmed it. In 1947, Henry S. Truman started the secret space program by assigning the Majestic 12. They decided that this would have to be kept in secret. To fund it with American taxpayer dollars, it was necessary to keep the citizens in fear of war so that they would allow their Congress to pass huge military budgets. The excess would then be used to fund the secret space program. To keep the people in fear of war, they planned to have a Cold War, then a nuclear arms race, then a race to the moon with Russia. After that, they would introduce terrorism, the 9/11 attack, and later, a fake alien invasion. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but the secret space program and the secret shadow government have grown together. When the shadow government got control of the news media, they were able to increase the unrest substantially with topics such as politics, coronavirus, environmental issues, racial issues, pro-life, pro-choice issues, and many others. This is only a small portion of everything that voters should understand. It would take many videos to tell it all. But what people need to understand is that they have been and still are being lied to, kept in the dark, and manipulated. People need to have an open mind and stop and consider what is really happening here. What are the motives behind these issues? And are we being manipulated by our enemies? Take the environmental issue, for instance. It might seem like a noble cause at first glance. Let's protect our planet from ourselves and preserve it for our future generations. But it was actually initiated to weaken our economy. True wealth only comes from the earth. It comes in the form of natural resources such as agriculture, mining, forestry, hydroelectric, petroleum. The environmental effort has attacked every one of these industries to either stop or substantially limit production and raise the cost. This was meant to hurt the economy by the loss of production and the loss of jobs, but it also increased internal unrest, which is what the shadow government really wants to do. It is just another way to manipulate public opinion. You can see it everywhere you look. This upcoming election is not a personality contest between its candidates. It is not a popularity contest between the political parties. It is a contest between the government of the people, by the people, for the people, and a shadow government that was set up by our enemies to overthrow the United States. Think about it. If, when you go to the polls, what if the only two names on the ballot was Khrushchev and George Washington? Who would you vote for? Your choice in this election is just as clear-cut. We have a true patriot in the White House now who is doing everything he can to defeat this secret shadow government. In his 2016 election campaign, he promised he would drain the swamp, but he has admitted recently that the swamp was deeper than he had anticipated. He has made a lot of progress and is still going forth, but if he loses this election, this just might be America's last election, and definitely their last fair election. If you could even consider this election fair. We have people among us that would want to change the government to socialism. I lived for 11 years in a socialist country, and I'm here to tell you socialism is not the answer. you'll still have the problems you have now. America at its worst is better than that. They never get a fair election. The rich are embezzling money while the poor are living in poverty. Anytime you look around, you can see 3 to 6 or even more police. And they give the word police brutality a new meaning. They are literally the accuser, the judge, the jury, and the executioner, all in one, and are never held accountable for what they do. I lived in a rural area, and the police killed a total of 7 people in 3 separate incidents within 2 miles of my home. I have good reason to believe that 3 were killed execution style and the officer received money for doing it. 3 were shot down for what I would consider a minor offense without being given a chance to surrender. I don't know why they shot the other one, but I know they let him lay where he fell and bleed to death without getting any medical assistance. Twice I had run-ins with the police, and I had done nothing wrong either time. The first time, they were prepared to shoot and kill me if I couldn't prove my identity or if I turned and ran. The second time, they were accusing me of stealing a vehicle that my employer had bought from them, and it was the police that had stolen the vehicle. No thanks. If you're talking changing our government to socialism, you're walking on the fighting side of me. As far as I'm concerned, socialism and communism are one and the same, and only half a step apart. The majority of the people, American people, do not want either one of them. We live in a time when others are desperately trying to manipulate our beliefs and our values. When you cast your vote this fall, remember that our enemies have spent your entire life trying to manipulate you out of the freedoms and rights that by the grace of God, our country's forefathers built into the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and our government. We don't need to change the government. We only need to protect it and implement what we were given. We need to defeat the shadow government. As our president is doing everything he can to do just that. We need to help him. That's my opinion. What's yours? Leave it in the comment below. Give me a like and a subscription if you want. And share this video anywhere you can. I thank you. Goodbye.